Patch 11.1.5 is here. New content, new customizations, and most importantly, class tuning. And while some specs got walls of text for tuning, Windwalker? We just got 2 lines. That's right, 2. But let me tell you, sometimes 2 lines are all it takes to shake things up. Heading into 11.1.5 of the War Within, it's no secret Windwalker's been thriving. Celestial Conduit has been a powerhouse in Raid, with guilds even stacking multiple monks in the race to World First, which hasn't been seen in, quite frankly, years. But this time, the spotlight's shifting. It's not Conduit getting the love, it's Shadopan. And these changes, well, they matter, especially for Mythic Plus. Let's break it down. The buffs to Shadopan focus on 2 things, Fists of Fury and our energy spenders. First up, 1 versus many. It now increases Fists of Fury's damage by 20%, up from 15%, and if you've played Shadopan, you know just how hard Fist of Fury carries in AoE. It is the backbone of the build. Then comes the big one, Efficient Training. It now boosts energy spenders by 40%, up from 20%. Now your first thought is probably Tiger Palm, and yes, it is affected, but the real winner here? Crackling Jade Lightning. Even at 20 Thunder King stacks when it's free, it still counts as an energy spender, and its impact cannot go amiss. So when we put this all together, we're looking at about a 2.5 overall single target increase and a 3 to 4% overall AoE increase for Shadopan. So the question on your mind, does this affect Raid? The short answer, not really. Raid fights are mostly single target with intermittent ad spawns that favour Conduit timers, so it still wins out there. The only real question mark boss is Styx Bunk Junker, where there could potentially be competitive viability for Shadopan as a result of the nature of the heavy AoE fight. But for Mythic Plus, well, this is where the shift happens. Before these buffs, Shadopan and Conduit were pretty neck and neck in M+. You could run either one and do well. But now, the gap is starting to open, and Shadopan is pulling ahead, especially in certain dungeons. So let's check out the rundown of where each hero talent is going to shine. Priory of the Sacred Flame, the Motherlode, and the Rookery. These dungeons are all about sustained AoE, pack after pack, with barely any downtime. These are Shadopan's territory. Cinderbrew Meadery, Darkflame Cleft, and Mechagon Workshop are dungeons that still favour burst AoE with significant downtime between pulls. Conduits, bread, and butter. Now for the Wildcard dungeons. Operation Floodgate and Theatre of Pain could go either way. Floodgate leans slightly more in favour of Conduit due to boss burst and pull pacing, but Shadopan really isn't that far behind here. And Theatre of Pain? Honestly, either could work. Sustained AoE benefits Shadopan, but Conduit can pop off with the right route and burst timings. As my passion in life is graphics design, I've made this trusty Venn diagram with all the dungeons to use as a good reference for which hero talent is going to be ideal for the 8 Season 2 dungeons going into 11.1.5. Now, before we get into talent changes for Shadopan as a result of the tuning, and yes, there are talent changes, it's worth discussing secondary stats. Now, when it comes to Conduit and Shadopan, both hero talents really like Mastery and Haste. However, Conduit prefers them in that order, and Shadopan the other way round. So if we take a look at this sim for Shadopan based on the changes, we can see a slight shift in certain pieces of gear towards a more haste focus. This includes gear such as Hitman's Holster and Wick's Golden Loop, which goes as far as dropping Cersei's Circlet for a really heavy weighted haste ring. Now, as a majority of players have built towards Conduit, it may take some time to get the perfect stat balance for Shadopan. However, this by no means makes it unviable with your current gear. It just means that when you get more haste, it will be even stronger. And the number you're roughly looking for is about 20,000. Alright, let's talk talents. With these buffs, there are now 2 main builds for Shadopan for Mythic Plus you'll want to know about. Firstly, the core Shadopan build. Now here, you're going to have two choices. The top row choice is going to be personal preference and your playstyle, and this is a choice between Ascension versus Drinking Horn cover and Spiritual Focus. The bottom row choice, however, is going to depend on your trinkets and the dungeons that you're running. If you're running a 90-second cooldown setup, think House of Cards or Funhouse Lens, you're going to want Xuan's Bond. However, if you're using the 2-minute Priory trinket, and the dungeon has big sustained pulls, go with Dual Threat. However, if the dungeon has smaller pulls but you are using the Priory trinket, try Rising Star instead, for more power being put into Rising Sun Kick. Now, I have mentioned the Priory trinket here. I am going to go over it a little bit more in detail after I go over the next talent build, which I'm calling the Wildcard build. Now here's the curveball. A new Striker the Windlord build for Shadopan. Yeah, you heard that right. This build brings back Strike, and it's actually competitive in AoE. It's not meta-breaking, but definitely viable, especially with the Priory trinket. You have one key choice here for this build, everything else is pretty locked in. Your first choice is going to be Fury of Xuan, for more single target and a bit more burst, and your second choice will be Slicing Winds, which you can take for more pure AoE damage. Now, as I've mentioned trinkets a bunch in the talent section, let's wrap this up with a big trinket debate. House of Cards versus Signet of the Priory for Shadopan. House of Cards gives you the consistent 90-second playstyle. It's solid, stable, and works in almost any route. Priory, however, shifts you into the 2-minute meta, which, with good planning and big pulls, can outscale House of Cards at higher key levels. Similar to selecting talents, selecting trinkets is going to be situation based on your dungeon level, your route, and your team. So, what's the verdict? These buffs are a win for Windwalker. They're not game breaking, but enough to give Shadopan its time to shine in Mythic Plus, in what has been a very heavy Conduit of the Celestial season due to its impact in the raiding scene. The options are healthy, builds are competitive, and Windwalker's toolkit just got a little bit deeper. I think Windwalker is honestly in one of its best iterations. With the availability we have in talent choices and builds, we can actually run across the majority of the game's content. So really, you ain't gonna hear no complaints here. Anyway, I've been Windwalker POV, and I hope all of you have a great time testing out the Shadopan changes, and this video helps you optimize your builds. Catch you in the next one. Peace!